Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Mackerman, and I'm currently in my final semester at Old Dominion University, set to graduate this May. I bring over 30 years of experience as a field service engineer, with about 15 of those years also dedicated to training and curriculum development for U.S. Navy electronic systems maintenance. In our field, we rely on live test beds, real equipment that's configured just as students will encounter in their duty stations, providing the most realistic hands-on experience possible. They get to see it, touch it, operate it, and even fix it during our training periods. This approach bridges the gap between training and real-world application, ensuring our students are mission ready from day one when they arrive to either their ship or their shore station. Today, we will explore embodied cognition, the idea that learning is enhanced through physical interaction and sensory experiences. This presentation examines 3 separate studies that highlight how technology, virtual simulation, and interactive learning environments have improved engagement, retention, and conceptual understanding. In the end all, we will discuss how we can apply these findings to real-world educational settings. These are great things, but unless we know how and where to use it, it only amounts to just being nice-looking things without much practical usefulness. What is embodied cognition? Embodied cognition suggests that learning is not just mental, but also physical. Our bodies play an active role in how we process and retain knowledge. This theory is backed by research in both neuroscience and cognitive psychology, showing that thinking is deeply linked to movement and sensory experiences. With an example being, when solving a math problem, students who physically gesture tend to solve problems more effectively than those who don't. This was emboldened and pointed out in the Black and his colleagues' article from 2012. Well, this means that the way we interact with the world physically can enhance learning efficiency and long-term retention. The first major study that we look at was from Wang and Wen in 2020. Wang and Wen focused on virtual simulations and their role in embodied learning. They examined how virtual environments engage learners by requiring sensory motor interaction, meaning that students physically interact with the digital content. Their study aimed to improve learning engagement and cognitive processing through real-time feedback and interactive problem solving. They designed and tested a virtual simulation platform, assessing its effectiveness on knowledge retention and user experience. The findings from this study were very interesting. The study found that using haptic feedback and real-time motion tracking significantly improved student engagement and learning retention. Students who interacted with the virtual simulation performed better in problem solving and conceptual application than those using traditional learning methods. The key benefit here was that virtual simulations bridged the gap between theoretical knowledge and real-world application, making abstract concepts much, much easier to grasp. For example, think about learning physics. Rather than just reading about Newton's laws, students can experience them in virtual space and observe and apply those forces in real time. The next study that we had in our readings came from Linger and his colleagues from 2016. They took embodied learning further by incorporating mixed reality simulations into science education. Their study focused on whether whole body movement improved learning compared to desktop simulations. To test this, they developed the Meteor simulation, where students physically acted out asteroid movements and planetary movements to learn about gravity and planetary motion. The real benefits from this were students using the whole body version of the meteor simulation developed stronger conceptual understanding of gravitational forces versus the basic desktop simulation. The physical experience of predicting and adjusting asteroid paths helped reinforce Newtonian physics concepts. Additionally, engagement and motivation were significantly higher in students using the embodied learning model. For example, imagine teaching gravity by having students act as planets, pulling asteroids and moons into orbit. This method leads to better retention than just reading this information out of a textbook. It improves the retention of the students by actually interacting with the simulation. It was incredible. The third study was Black and his colleagues from 2012. Things that they studied and focused on were the following. They examined how, first, gestural interfaces and also haptic feedback based interfaces improved learning outcomes. They also explored how physical interactions, i.e. moving objects on touchscreens and using force feedback and other haptic models, impacted knowledge retention and problem solving. Their study highlighted the role of direct manipulation to make learning more intuitive and effective throughout an environment. The findings and benefits of this study were found to be as follows. Performance improvements were observed in the following areas. The study showed that students who used gestural and haptic interfaces performed better in memory retention and learning material comprehension. Their mental representations were much more enhanced, and their scores within physics and math were much higher. The material retention also on a much higher level. Haptic feedback, where force was applied by moving virtual gears or moving a lever, helped students understand physics and engineering concepts better. For example, imagine a student learning about friction, not just through a diagram or through a page in a book, but by feeling the resistance in a simulation. This is a truly rubber meeting the road type of effect that makes the learning process much more tangible, much more fun, as well as much more effective. Key benefits were also shown across all studies that were fairly similar. For one, you had stronger engagement where students were much more actively involved in their learning. I mean, looking at all of these studies collectively, commonly, stronger engagement was an absolute factor in each and every one of the articles. We also seen common learning benefits of embodied cognition-based education within better conceptual understanding. Complex topics are easier to grasp through physical interaction. You're learning by doing. You're learning by touching, feeling, maybe even tasting or smelling. This is something that is quite different than just reading it out of a textbook. Along with it, increased retention of material that was learned in the process. Physical movements enhanced long-term memory formation. Along with it, it also supported correcting misconceptions about faulty ideas, uh, ideas that may have not been grouped up or rounded in scientific fact. These got corrected, especially when it came down to gravity and force misconceptions in the Black et al. Text and the like. There were many times that they noted that misconceptions were corrected in their studies. The next area of concern is how can we apply this in education? How can we apply it where we use it? How can we apply it in the field we have? Well, while these studies focus primarily on the STEM fields, embodied cognition can actually be applied across many disciplines. Of course, here again we say STEM, but virtual labs and physics simulations and even chemistry simulations and other basic simulations. There are even basic simulations in biology that can help a person learn STEM subjects in a quite easier manner than through just textbooks alone. Also, language and literacy. If you've ever used a program called Duolingo or Babbel, this really helps language learning to a tune that is just much higher than just completely reading out of textbooks or trying to repeat after information on cassette tapes or CDs or other media. This allows you to get involved with and even maybe speak with a virtual teacher, if you will. It's much different. You get to really experience language and as well literacy in areas where there are simulations now out there that allow you to take on a character, such as, say, Edgar Allan Poe. You could learn to be Edgar Allan Poe for a little bit and then get to see what his motivations were when he wrote The Raven. It's interesting. But basically being the character can help understand the character and their motivations within a simulation. As well, you also have mathematics where gesture-based learning can help younger students develop number sense and spatial reasoning. They pick up 3 apples, they pick up 3 more apples. They can see right there they have 6 apples. They don't have to sit there and think about it too much. They don't have to worry about being able to add and do difficult mathematical operations. They can see right in front of them how many they have. And they can attach it to mathematical equations much easier. Well, with all of this, there are also potential challenges that come with embodied learning. Despite the benefits, integrating embodied learning into classrooms really does have some very serious challenges that require good solutions. First is the cost of the technology. Schools will need funding for virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, haptic devices, and unfortunately they don't really come cheap. Schools are going to have to invest in these things long term over a long period of time in which to be able to use these at an effective level. Along with this, teacher training needs to happen to be able to allow those teachers and trainers to use the technologies properly. They also need to integrate them into the lesson plans. However, not only do they need to be taught about this, they also need to be able to pay for these trainings as well. And most of these are very costly also. It stitches right back into number one on the cost of technology. So it just can heap challenge upon challenge upon challenge. But then on top of this, we have other concerns too. Some students may have physical limitations, color blindness, different other limitations that could hamper some styles of simulation. We also need to ensure that the tools can meet diverse needs of diverse peoples that are learning within our contexts. Additionally, not all students may have equal access to immersive tools outside of school. So access can be just as much of a concern as accessibility itself. Kind of wrapping a bow on all of this and getting our takeaways from this, what we can really understand here is that embodied cognition enhances learning. And it is a very powerful tool for learning. It's supported by evidence across multiple studies, and we understand that sensory motor engagement boosts comprehension and retention. Once we can get our hands on some of this stuff and we can experience it with our whole body, retaining it tends to be a fairly academic piece. Also, virtual and haptic tools improve outcomes. Technologies like virtual reality and motion tracking and gestural interfaces improve engagement, retention, and understanding. So you don't have a lot of loss when people can really truly experience with their whole sensory package. And while challenges do exist and we can integrate embodied approaches, education needs to embrace these embodied learning methods for better student success. And future educational environments need to really bring embodied learning techniques in to optimize learning for students and ultimately their end-all success within a educational program. Normally, in a fully attended presentation, we'd open the floor to discussion and questions at this point and in this juncture. But in this case, instead, let's just consider a few basic questions here at this point in time. First of all, how can embodied learning be applied beyond STEM and science? Can you think of other disciplines where this would be very useful? Second, what challenges might schools face in implementing these embodied cognition technologies? How can these challenges be overcome? And third, should traditional methods still be used, or is interactive learning the future that will basically replace traditional methods? Or can a balance be struck across both methods? If you get right down to it, the answer to number one, or answers to number one beyond STEM, are simulations that require a lot of hands-on skill, such as flight training, and as well even training where physical interaction, or I should say vocal interaction, if you will, between two individuals can take place. These are great areas where embodied cognition can come in and really save the day and give someone a good starting basis before they go out into a real world situation to turn that over. As far as the challenges to schools, we need to listen to not only the teachers, but the actual learners that come into these schools. We need to listen to them and find out what challenges they will face when it comes to not just working within their traditional methods, but also bringing in interactive learnings, other embodied cognition type of teaching material, etc., to allow them to be the most successful that they can be. How can these challenges be overcome? Well, a large amount of time. It's going to take money, dedication, and just pure out effort to make these challenges disappear. And here again, in this third one, should traditional methods be used? Most definitely. You need to mix in traditional methods along with interactive learnings to help bolster both areas of learning methods and have them work in concert and in in a symbiotic relationship with one another. This is where they can be extremely beneficial for each other. Here, and we now have come to the conclusion of our presentation. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to watch this presentation. I hope you've learned a great deal about embodied cognition and how it can help shape learning experiences. And I just encourage all of you to think about how you can apply it within some of your own disciplines and maybe even help reshape education in the future with embodied type of interactions. I mean, as you see right there, my own opinion is right there in front of you under the thank you. It says technology should enhance learning through embodied interaction, not necessarily replace it. And I really, here again, I want to thank everyone for being here for this presentation, and will help. I hope, like I say, I hope it will help you, with understanding where you can use it in your future work as an instructional design technologist. Here are the references that were used for the 3 articles that we talked about in this presentation from Black and his colleagues, Lindred and his colleagues, and then the Wang and Wen offering that also brought all of this presentation to light. Thank you.